Welcome to the podcast about investing in startups, where existing investors can learn how to get the best deal possible. And those that have never before invested in startups can learn the keys to success from the venture experts. Your host is Nick Moran, and this is The Full Ratchet.
Welcome to another special release of Investor Stories. On this installment, the experts discuss a startup that they did not invest in, why they passed, and if there was a key learning that now informs their approach. Here's the segment called Why I Passed. So on today's special segment, we have John Greathouse of Rincon Venture Partners. John, can you tell us a story about a startup that you were very interested in, but ultimately chose not to invest, and why it was that you passed?
Yeah, there's a couple. The one that comes to mind is a company that I really liked the founder until I realized that her husband worked at the company. And I tried to get right with that. Like I tried to rationalize how this could work. And I met him and he was a douchebag. And I tried to say, well, I know he's a douchebag, but maybe it'll work. I really tried to talk myself into it. And we just had an edict, Jim Annelman, my partner at Pet Ventures. We have an edict that we just don't do those kinds of deals, right? And so we passed. And sure enough, I talked to the woman. She's actually a wonderful person. I'm not going to name her, but she's a very skilled entrepreneur. She sold her company, but when I talked to her, she had divorced her husband. She said it was a horrible breakup and it really had a big impact on the company. And all the things that we were concerned about seemed to have played out. The good news is she did get an exit out of it, and so she made some money. But I think it was a painful process for everybody.
On today's special segment, we have Peter Boyce II of General Catalyst Partners and Rough Draft Ventures. Peter, can you tell us a story about a startup that you passed on, why it was that you passed, and how the situation played out?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of my nightmares is this story. So very early on with Rough Draft, we were thinking through how we were going to hear pitches from teams that were not in the Boston area, so kind of distributed. So whether they were out on the West Coast, Midwest, anywhere else in the country. And so we started to experiment with doing video pitches, so just presentations over Google Hangout. And we had like the projector set up, we had all the Skype IDs and everything set up for this company. And lo and behold, we start the Google Hangout with the two co-founders presenting, and I don't know what it was, but their internet connection was the absolute worst. Like I've never seen such kind of buggy, jittery video. It was, an already kind of complicated business to try to understand, even if you had a great connection. But with like the bad connection, the frozen video, a few of us were like, oh my gosh, like how can we even make sense of this story with this video? But, the entrepreneurs got through the presentation and we had this kind of really incoherent story. And at the end of it, folks just didn't feel like they had come away like inspired and excited enough to back this team. And it's unfortunate because, the entrepreneurs, has become one of my best friends. They've got an amazing company that is growing and scaling. They brought on amazing investors. And it was just because of that terrible, internet connection and that choppy video where we just, we couldn't build consensus around investing. So this is one I think I'm going to continue to live to regret passing.
Bummer. Can you say what the startup was?
It's the word. Yeah, it's my friend Ryan Shea's company. It's a company called Blockstack Labs. It was originally called One Name. This is a really fascinating company in the blockchain space. Ryan's one of Ryan and Munib are two of the most talented, thoughtful co-founders I've met. Their startup's been since invested, in by Union Square Ventures and Shanna Fisher. And I'm just so bummed that Rough Draft isn't a part of the story.
Well, if there's one lesson I've learned from this podcast, it's don't use Google Hangouts because it's often very spotty.
Oh, it's the worst.
On today's special segment, we have John Houston. John, can you tell us about why you most often pass on startups for investment?
Yeah, this is really deep. I don't like them. I just don't like the entrepreneur or the co-founders. I don't think they deserve to build wealth, personally. It always tickles me, particularly if I've had a second or third meeting. The three most important words I want to hear. I don't know. I was hoping you could help me figure that out. I don't know. It just makes me chuckle when I think how many times entrepreneurs who have such an early idea are incapable of saying, I don't know, too soon, I need help. So that's one flag for me. If I've never heard, I don't know, I usually don't end up liking the person to the extent I think they deserve to build wealth and that they will be successful.
Interesting.
There's another kick out for me, and that is when somebody makes the blunder to brag about they never miss their son's soccer games or their daughter's softball games or whatever. And I usually say, I'm not paying you to be father of the year. And if you think that you can continue your current family life and birth a business, then I think you're going to hit the wall. And there is no business that is worth you ruining your family and marriage. So I don't think you have any grasp of what it feels like to spend 3 years of 60 to 80-hour weeks and miss most games. And that sounds pretty harsh, but I also think I'm doing them a favor.
May not be the best decision for them in that case.
Yeah, this is really tough stuff if you've watched people go through it. Total immersion and really lose their families. And this is all they can do. It's just so totally all-consuming. And not a lot of people are up to it. So if I see somebody who I think is delusional, particularly if they've come out of large corporate America in their middle age and they think they can do this with 50-hour weeks, I don't know anybody who's done it with 50-hour weeks.
Yeah, it amazes me that the gamut of skills that are required, the amount of time that's required, and sort of the emotional and mental fortitude required is pretty enormous. And it takes a rare person that can go the distance in all those areas.
Yeah, I think the key is you've got to get to the point where it's not work. I mean, the definition of work for me is it's only work if you'd really rather be doing something else. And if you'd really rather be at your daughter's volleyball game, then I don't think you're going to be successful because now this is work and it's painful. 3 to 5 years in total immersion. Yeah. So they've really got to want to do this with their life, and they've got to have family members who want to allow them to do it and will do their part too. So those are the two reasons most frequently that I say no. I just don't like the entrepreneur and shudder to think having them in my life for the next 3 to 5 years. My litmus test is, would I want to sit in this board and spend a lot of time with this entrepreneur? And if the answer is no, I don't invest, which isn't to suggest I always want to take the board seat. But if I don't want to take the board seat, why would I invest? And then secondly, I feel very protective, I think is the right word, of people who go into this because they see all the headlines and think they're going to be incredibly successful and have no conception of how difficult this really is and how high the casualty rate is on their health, on their marriage, and on the likelihood that the company will ever give them a meaningful payback. Most of them may not get a return that even meets the minimum wage when it's all done.
Yeah, I've seen some startups recently that had very successful exits and the founders got nothing.
It's called the preference stack.
Common can kill you.
You're right. And that goes back to the original comment I made about exit goal congruence. It's a travesty to lie to these entrepreneurs and not have them understand what their payday can be. We have something, by the way, Nick, we call the payday calculator. And it's just a little Excel spreadsheet that we load in the cap table as it exists today. Then we load in the cap table after the round that we're leading with at least a 10% option pool. And then we will load in through the capital access plan what the additional follow-on capital might be at some guesstimate of uptick, if any,
sure,
in valuation. And then we just can play around with what the price tags have to look like. We take $1 million off the top, presuming that's transaction costs and bankers' fees. And it's really easy because we can show to an entrepreneur that if you follow the capital access plan, if you hit your numbers and you can raise the capital needed, if this company sells for $24 million and transaction costs are $1 million, and you and the co-founder are going to split $7 million, is that really good for you? That's really helpful because so many of them haven't really run the numbers. They don't really understand the impact of the preference stack. They do not understand dilution. And they just hope that their options will be replenished and their shares replenished with each follow-on round. And unless they really are overperforming, that's unlikely.
That will wrap up this installment of Investor Stories. Head over to thefullratchet.net to leave a comment, sign up for the newsletter, or find resources discussed on any of the episodes. Until next time, remember to over-prepare, choose carefully, and invest confidently. Thanks for listening.